Welcome to the latest episode of Huntsman Knows How. I'm Kevin Gundersen, Vice President of Communications and Government Affairs, and I am pleased to be joined today by Jan Buberl, the newly appointed president of the Huntsman Performance Products Division. I've invited Jan here today to talk about growing up in Germany, backpacking through China, his career at BASF and Huntsman, wine growing in Napa Valley, and a book about the meaning of life. Jan, welcome to the Huntsman Knows How podcast.
Thank you very much.
Jan, as most people that work at Huntsman know, was recently appointed to the president of our Performance Products Division, which in my eyes is a pretty significant career milestone. You're 2 weeks into the job. I imagine you're breathing from the fire hose. How's it going so far?
It's pretty intense. Steep learning curve, I would say. And I come home every night and said, my God, I thought I knew it and I didn't know anything. So I learn day by day. It's great. It's wonderful to work with the people. I'm highly welcomed to the PP team, so I really enjoy it.
Yeah, we're going to talk over the next 45 to 60 minutes a lot about performance products, but I actually want to start in Germany, where you were born and raised. And you are the son of a textile engineer, which was your dad, and your mom was a chemist. Tell us about your life.
Yeah, look, I grew up in Germany in the city of Wuppertal, which is in the rural area, industry area. So to put it into context, that would be probably Pittsburgh for the American setup. So big hearts, people have big hearts, but it's rough on the edges, right? So, that's where I grew up. But I already experienced when I was a kid that the textile industry was there, but the textile industry was already at that time challenged around competitiveness in Germany. So my dad worked in that industry, and he was wise enough to say, guys, you got to learn something where you can move around in the world because it will be a global world in the future. And at that time, I had no clue what he was talking about. But sitting now here in the woodlands, I now understood what he meant, yeah.
How did he know that? Tell us about him.
Well, look, my dad spent a lot of time when I was a kid traveling to Asia. And he started to set up technologies for textile production, first in Japan, then in Korea, and then in China. So I remember as a kid that we actually had Japanese visitors at home. I remember that very well because these were colleagues of my dad who came to visit, and as a appreciation of relationship, he invited them for dinner. And one of the memorable events I had was actually I was a little kid, and the Japanese is a very formal culture. And at the end of the evening, they asked if they could see a kid's bedroom in Germany. So I remember that very well as a 5-year-old, that suddenly a very well-dressed Japanese standing in my bedroom to see how a German kid is in the bedroom. It was wonderful. And then they came a couple of months later, and I was the star at home because I had Japanese toys. Nobody at that time would ever had that in Germany. So it's my memory of my dad branching out to Asia and getting exposure to that at an early age.
Coming from a blue-collar town, Jan, was your mom as a chemist, was she a trailblazer of sorts?
Well, look, my mom, when I was born, my mom was a homestead mom, right? So she did that till I have one brother. After my brother and I were born, she stayed at home, but she was a wonderful reference always when I screwed up on my chemistry test to help me out on this one. So, yeah, but she certainly. And the funny thing is, my mom got to know my dad in the company. So she was the chemist and my dad was the engineer. So that's how the whole story started.
Well, I think John Huntsman would call that human chemistry, which we obviously try to have inside of Huntsman.
It worked out fine, as you can see, right? Yeah.
So tell us about your upbringing and then move on to university and BASF, and tell us about your professional career.
Yeah, look, I grew up in the city of Wuppertal, so I lived there all my life till I finished school there. At my age, you still had mandatory military service, so I had to go to the military service in Germany. And then after this, I was for a year, and after this, I was free to go, to move, and I wanted to leave my hometown. And at that time, I was looking to study something around business, because I knew that actually I was pretty lousy in chemistry. So I knew I was not the science guy. And at that time, there was actually the opportunity to study and get a scholarship. So I started to check which company were generous enough to offer scholarships. So one of the companies was BASF's, and they gave me a scholarship. So actually, that's the way I ended up in the chemical industry, because I remember I also applied with the Deutsche Bank, and they denied me. So otherwise, maybe I would have ended up somewhere in the Deutsche, in the banking industry. But it was a super match. I think I enjoyed really working in the chemical industry. I appreciated this hands-on working with people, understanding what you're doing, and really impacting the quality of life via chemistry. And that's how I ended up starting also with BASF after I finished my university. And the beauty was actually that I got a scholarship, but I had to study and work. So every time I had the opportunity to test my learning, and I really started in a production plant somewhere in Ludwigshafen, Germany, and started from the ground up.
So how many years were you in Ludwigshafen, and then what drew you to come to the US for work?
So I came the first time really to the US by finishing my studies with an MBA. So I went to North Carolina to finish to do an MBA. So that was the first time I really lived and studied in the US.
And what year is this, Jan? What year are we talking?
In 99, and I finished then my MBA in 2000. And I wanted to return to Germany, but then I got immediately shipped to China. So I ended up to go back to Ludwigshafen, but I went back to Shanghai and worked then for nearly a year in Shanghai after I studied in the US. So yeah, and then after this, I had to go back to Germany, and then I spent a couple of years in Germany before I left again.
We had Tony Hankins on the podcast 4 or 5 months ago, and as you know, Tony spent a lot of time in China, but you were there early 2000s when it was still emerging. It's a very different place than it was today. What was that experience like, to go from Germany to the US to China? That's a hat trick if there ever was one.
Yeah, so the first time I had an experience with China was in 1996. And I had that brilliant idea to backpack in China in 1996 by buying one ticket to Beijing and another ticket back from Hong Kong. And in between these two flights, there were 6 weeks. And I actually backpacked with a friend of mine who's even taller than me through China, through the whole of China. And it was one of the best experiences I had. I mean, it was very cheap. I traveled. My sons asked me that recently, and I remember that very well. It cost me $800 all in to travel 6 weeks in China with everything. And it was really attractive for a student at that point of time. And on top of it, you got a free diet. I came back so skinny, it was unbelievable. My mom didn't realize when I came back from Hong Kong that I was still the same son who left for Beijing. But I was fascinated by the culture. So yes, I was disappointed that I didn't start working in Ludwigshafen after my return from the US, but I had the opportunity to go to China and I wanted to go for it. So yeah, but it was, it's a different culture. I tried. I mean, I learned Mandarin even, right? But I figured out very quickly that my Mandarin I learned was not solid enough to survive in Shanghai, right? I mean, I could read things, but for conversation, people laughed about me trying to speak. So I knew that this was not my sweet spot to shine.
So since that time, you have obviously amassed significant global business experience. When you think about the China that you backpacked through versus the China today, how do you think about that arc of progress?
So I tell you a really great story to demonstrate, to answer your question. So if you're in Shanghai, you have that famous, the Bund, right there at the river, right? And right there is the Nanjing Lu, which is one of the main shopping areas. And there's a very well-known hotel. It's called the Peace Hotel. It has a new and old Peace Hotel. So I took a picture right there when I was a backpacker in 1996. So I came home and was really happy and showed the picture to my family and said, look, that's where I've been. So my dad went to an old photo album and he said, look, I took the same picture in 1975. And it was unbelievable during that time to compare the style of the people, how they were dressed between 1975 in 1996. So the picture that he showed me was the classical kind of standard clothes that you know from Mao Zedong, right, with the hat and everything. And I already saw a progression. Now fast forward, I took the same picture in the year 2001. And you could, in these pictures, see the rapid growth and change of the Chinese society and the prosperousness of that society. And I was just in Shanghai last December, and yes, the Peace Hotel still exists. Yes, the Bund still exists, but it's a different country. And for me personally, it's fascinating to see in my lifetime with my own eyes this transformation of a society in that speed and dimension. It's just fascinating.
It really is an incredible story of human progress, how that country has lifted itself in the last generation.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. And so many companies around the world have played a large role in that. So you leave China in what year?
In 2001.
And you come to?
Germany.
Okay, so back to Germany.
So I'm
trying to get you to the U.S. So
yeah. So and to fast forward. So I tell you a funny story. So I knew that I had to go back to Germany, but I knew that I was supposed to be further developed in BSF. Global experience was a key element of your development, and I was assigned then. I got informed where I wanted to, where was my next assignment, and I wanted to work in South America. I was like, I need to go to Argentina or Brazil. That was my dream, and I will. Because I traveled there and I was just fascinated by the culture, by the openness, of the people, and so from that standpoint, when I was informed that I would go to the U.S. to Raleigh, North Carolina, I was probably not very politically, and I showed my disappointment to my boss, and I said, but I thought we said South America, and the answer was, Jan, we are not a travel agency. I will never forget that, and I knew that, okay, that was not the right comment to make, but fast forward, it was probably the best decision that I ended up in Raleigh, Durham, in North Carolina as the starting point to work in the U.S.
What did you do in North Carolina?
So I worked at that time in a complete different field. I spent quite a bit of time in the world of agriculture. So I sold fungicides for different fruit and vegetables. So I had the chance to experience great things. I spent a lot of time in Sonoma and Napa Valley, not to drink, but to make sure that the grapes are beautiful to produce great wine. I spent.
Yeah, I'm sure you never tasted the grapes.
No, absolutely not. I knew where the focus was of the job. So, or I had to go to Idaho to make sure that we get good potatoes and that the potatoes at McDonald's look good. So yeah, so that was what I did in North Carolina for a while, and then I also worked in there to sell genetically modified organisms, so GMOs in corn and soybeans. That was the other piece I did. So very completely different to what I do today, but it was great. So I learned quite a bit.
I'm certainly not an ag chemical expert by any means, but was that kind of the early days of GMOs in terms of innovation and technology?
Yes. So that was the case. At that time, it was heavily dependent on glyphosate. So you basically, there were two competing technologies. One was done by Monsanto. The other was done by Cyanamid or American Home, which BASF at the time acquired. So I was working on that technology. And yeah.
So how long were you in North Carolina?
I was in North Carolina for 4 years.
And then you moved to the Garden State?
No. Then I didn't move to the Garden State. I moved to the beautiful city of Barcelona.
Oh, so, yeah, that's a lot better than New Jersey.
It was pretty nice, yeah. I remember that when we moved to Barcelona, we lived on the hills of Barcelona, and we were standing on the terrace with my wife, and you could see the Mediterranean Sea in the back. And I said to her, from here, location-wise, only downhill. Because it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. The downside was you had to work. Otherwise, it was a great location to live.
So from Barcelona to New Jersey?
No, back to Raleigh, North Carolina. And then I had to go to New Jersey after this. Yeah, so they shipped me back and forth over the Atlantic.
Now, what happened? Did something significant in your life happen in Barcelona?
Oh, yeah. So
what was that?
We moved to Barcelona with a family of 2 and came back with a family of 3. And 3.5. The other one was on the way. Yeah. So from that standpoint, my wife was pregnant when we moved back to Raleigh, North Carolina.
Where did you meet your wife?
I met my wife in the U.S. actually. So my wife is from South America. She's from Ecuador. So in certain ways, I could realize my dream to be exposed to the Latin culture, and I live it every day.
I was going to say, Jan, that's a pretty good trade. You never got to work in South America, but you married a woman from Ecuador. That's
I take that any day.
You got what you wanted.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, all good.
Okay, so back to the U.S. with BASF, and you moved into a role in North American corporate strategy.
Correct. So I left a division and worked for the corporate for BASF Corporation in strategy, and it was all centered around the idea of how can BASF take full advantage of shale gas. Wow. We really, that was the time when shale gas got really in full swing. So I was working on the corporate strategy, how we can take advantage of it in terms of investments and all these pieces.
What did you learn going from inside of a division, like something inside the ag chemical business, to a broader corporate strategy role where you get to see the whole aperture of issues?
Look,
what did you learn?
Yeah, so one of the things that's certainly different, you are an expert in certain dimension in a division. You learn, if you're in a corporate piece, you have to step back from the details and see the bigger pictures, and you cannot be anymore the expert. You have to rely on other people to be the expert. So that was certainly a key learning for me. But the other thing that is very helpful was very helpful in my future progression was the understanding to align and drive impact, right? In terms of socializing ideas, aligning people around an idea. Because reality is, if you work in a corporate setup and you drive strategy, you can be just a thought leader, but you cannot be an implementer. And this influencing and impact skill that you have to develop to align people around a idea and concept which actually have the power to execute is something that was beneficial for me to really learn that in that context.
I want to ask you, how did you learn to trust people? Because the higher you go in an organization and you go from the person doing the work to the person leading other people that are doing the work, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but the higher you go, your job is to ensure that other people deliver and drive them towards a goal. What was that transition like?
Look, the journey of trusting people. I mean, look, first of all, the way I manage is exactly what Hezu described is trust. You have to trust people. You have to stick to your word. You have to do what you say you do. And I think that is a critical marker for me of trusting people. If you promise something, you put the other person entrusted you that you do what you say. So I measure people in the way of saying, tell me what you do and do it. And then if you cannot do it, you better tell me transparently and don't hide it why you cannot do it. If you want to cover it up and spin a story, I think the trust I have in you is going down. So transparency and being open of it is for me a big thing, and good and bad things, right? And I always encourage everybody, if you screw up, right, and that's how I live too, is if I screw up, I want to learn of it and don't repeat the same mistake. And if you make yourself vulnerable, you start to trust also people to say, look, I didn't do this right, I did this right, and I will change and adapt my approach for the future. But look, it's an ongoing journey of trusting people because human beings and situations are complex, and every day the situation is different. But I think over my career, I got a good reader of character, and I love to look people in the eyes and see them in their body language because you can see I have a fairly good hit rate to say this person I can trust and this person I cannot trust. But I'm sometimes always surprised that my hit rate is probably I have to recalibrate my hit rate of this one. Yeah.
So Jan, how many years did you spend total years at BASF?
18 years.
So after 18 years at BASF, which is the largest chemical company in the world, hulking global German, the pinnacle of the chemical industry, you came to Huntsman. How did that happen? And what was it like going from BASF to Huntsman?
Yeah, it's so one of the reasons is why I also left BASF is I didn't want to go back to Germany. Believe it or not, right? They did a big mistake. They let me out of Germany for too long of a time, so I didn't want to go back because I had that horror of sitting somewhere in the headquarters and have to ask for 5 permissions to buy 5 pencils, right? And I loved it so much to drive things and do things, and I was just scared to go back and lose all that passion that I have to be entrepreneur. So
the bureaucracy and the layers of a large organization.
Exactly. Oh, no, that's not my world, right? So when I...
That's very un-German of you, Jan.
I know, and I think that is already the influence I got over the years from my wife, maybe, that I lost that side. She got more German, I got less German, so it's probably a pretty nice blend. So that's why I said, okay, let's see what's out there, what opportunities I have to stay in the US, because I really like to work in the US. The way business is conducted, the speed of decision making, the drive, the risk taking, I think energizes me deeply. So I said, that's the place to stay. So,
and you came to Huntsman.
Yes. So look, I knew somebody in Huntsman, actually, who was a former BASF colleague. So David Stryker, I fought with him some interesting patent litigation. I was his client there. So from that standpoint, we had a fairly good relationship. And I pinged him and said, look, I'm looking for opportunities outside of Huntsman, also outside of BASF. What about Huntsman? And a couple of weeks later, I had lunch with Peter, and from there it started, and here I am.
Well, Jan, the one thing that you and I both share in common is that we were brought to Huntsman by David Stryker, and I think that you probably share the same very significant sense of gratitude that I share for David bringing us to such a great company. So that was 2016, 2015?
2014, October, okay, September, October, yeah.
So it's been a decade with a move to Venator in between, which for those that don't know listening, Venator was Huntsman Pigments division that was spun out, and Jan went with Venator. Talk about your last decade at both Huntsman and Venator, and as you enter this position as president of the Performance Products division, what are you thinking about over the next year? This is a significant leadership role in our company, one of our 3 business divisions, and I think listeners would be interested to know how you're looking ahead in the coming 3, 6, 9, 12 months, both internally as a company, but also market dynamics.
Yeah. So look, I think when I joined Huntsman 2014, it was for me a huge change to what I was used to, but it was a refreshing change, right? The people who have spent a lot of time in Huntsman take a lot of things for granted, which are not. The freedom of decision making we have at Huntsman, the entrepreneurial spirit that's being fostered, right? It's fascinating, it's energizing. And the first couple of months I was with Huntsman, I was always looking to align with somebody what to do. And then I figured out if you want to have this, you are in the wrong company. You are asked to do things, right? You are asked to implement things. And I think that's a theme that was fostered in Pigments when I joined there, and going on that transition of carving it out of Huntsman, IPOing it as Venator. That was always my dream, to one time have an opportunity to stand there on the balcony in the New York Stock Exchange. And but there's a lot of hard work to get to that balcony. I can tell everybody it was wonderful, and the way we did it as a team was great. So this experience certainly was enriching. And then I would say coming then back to Huntsman and working for Tony Hankins in polyurethanes was great. I learned so much working with him and running the business, driving the business in the right direction, and driving transformation of a business to a more downstream placed business is something that is very helpful for me also now in my new role, right? The way how Tony is running the PU division is a good kind of a framework that I can take and adapt to the PP business. Yes, the PP business has specific dynamics, but certain principles around the ones in my experience I had in PU will certainly help me there. So coming to the later part of your question, down where do I want to take the business in terms of PP? Look, there is PP is in a very important moment right now. We have deployed a lot of capital in very exciting projects and very exciting investments. And the e-grader we just finished. I think we are ramping it up now. Falcon is in the final stage to being finished in Petfurda, our project over there. So these are significant capital projects that allow us to grow in a more downstream differentiate area, which is exactly where we want to go. But we got to ramp it up. We got to execute flawlessly to do it. So that's one key area of this one.
And Jan, for those listeners that don't know, eGrader and Falcon, what markets do those serve? Why did we make those investments?
Yeah, so eGrader is a fascinating technology that will allow us to go in high value, innovative spaces like microchips and semiconductors. Yes, the qualification time and getting into that space is longer, but the value we can create and the uniqueness of our solution is great. So that is a brand new market space we are exploring in PP, and I'm really encouraged what we see, and now it's really executing and driving, growing it. On the Falcon Petfurda side, there are interesting market spaces like the PU additives that would go in spaces like spray foam, and I think we have technology. Some of them is so unique in the market, addressing things like sustainability, blowing agent issues, which are unique market needs we can fulfill. And I'm really excited about this one, getting in these spaces and growing those. So from that standpoint, that's one area. The other one is we got to maximize the value we have in the business. We have 10 production sites all over the globe. Some of them have significant headroom that we want to fill, but we have to run these things reliable. So getting the reliability right, adding business that is value adding, and running these assets flat out to dilute fixed costs and be present in the market space where we want to be is critical. And last but not least, there is some exciting opportunities in our space on the innovation side. We talked about some of the projects we have with eGrader, some of this we have with our PU catalyst. So there's more in that space where it can really grow. So I'm really excited what we can do and how we want to move forward. And yes, we have headwinds in Europe with the whole macroeconomic situation. We know what's going on in the Americas. But you know what? Our job is to be prepared for the upswing. Our job is to be ready to take advantage of the opportunity, and that's what we're doing. And we take the future in our own hands, and I'm really excited with the PP leadership team to strive and grow.
Well, Jan, I know that I speak for many Huntsman associates that have known you for almost a decade, that we're excited for your leadership role in performance products. And we're looking forward to what you do ahead in that job. You mentioned the market situation in Europe, which I think is a great segue to some global issues. You talked a lot about your global experience. And when you've lived in a country like China, and you've lived in Europe, not just in Germany, but in Barcelona, and you've lived in the US, and you've traveled around the world, you have a perspective. And the world in the late 90s and in the early 2000s, when you were at the beginning of your career, is very different than it is today. Both kind of in the international system, but also in the chemical industry. When you look at the geopolitical/economic situation today in the world, what do you think and what do you see? And obviously nobody can predict the future, but as you look out over the next 1, 2, 3 years, what's the world going to look like? Yeah. $1 million question for you.
Yeah. So I give you my view of it, and it's probably absolutely wrong in some aspects, maybe right in other ones.
Oh, but that's not going to make you unique, my friend.
Yeah. So from that standpoint, I'm watching 3 mega themes globally that we have to watch in the chemical space. So everybody has probably that on the radar. The massive overcapacity of production in China. A lot of these chemical value chains have significant capacity overhang in China, which were built for the growth in China and for export. So that's a big watch out that will drive global dynamics. The second one we have to be careful is the whole geopolitical tension that you mentioned. I think there is a topic we got to address around deglobalization. We grew up in the last 20, 25 years in a world that was moving closer rather than moving apart. I think we got to really think through that, what that means for our markets in terms of a more local for local approach. So how do you ring fence certain markets, given that probably trade tension may be a little bit more difficult in the medium and short term? And then the third factor I'm watching very carefully is the whole competitiveness of Europe. And look, I read in the mornings normally two newspapers. The one is the Wall Street Journal, and the other one is the FAZ, which is a German newspaper, right? And historically, I actually started with the German newspaper and then followed up by the Wall Street Journal. I started to spend now more time on the Wall Street Journal. I switched the order and then less on the German newspaper because it's simply too depressing to read some of the nonsense that I read there, right? So, and from that standpoint, this is certainly a factor that we have to watch how that overall impacts our business, the whole competitiveness of Europe. And I'm certainly observing that. I'm believing that people will wake up and address certain things, because a strong Europe and a competitive Europe for the chemical market is absolutely critical.
You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to ask a German. Do you think that Europe, and particularly Germany, can turn this around? Because when you think about Germany, it is one of the greatest industrial powerhouses in modern history. And it has always been the export economy that everybody in the world looked to when it came to making things. And in the last decade, for a variety of reasons, which our CEO hasn't been shy about publicly, they seem to have gotten away from that. And I think there's been some glimmers of hope, at least at the political level, which Huntsman has been a very significant part of in our efforts in Europe politically. But these trends, they're not 1, 2, 3, 4 year trends. These are 10-year trends. And if a chemical industry, which is the backbone of Germany, has been the backbone of Germany for 100+ years, goes away, that's a cataclysmic shift for Europe. And we're seeing some of that. And I'm curious, you have a unique perspective as a German. How do you see it?
I think you're right, Kevin. A lot of investment decisions, which would de-emphasize the chemical market in Germany or in Europe, have already been taken. Let's be clear, right? Now, coming back to how do you see things shaping up in Germany? I'm a strong believer that there will be awakening, but it's a fundamental shift of the economical model of Germany. So if you step back, the German economy since 1945, post-war, was an economy that has had different impacts. The one was, you had to rebuild the country after the war, so there was a significant rebuild demand. A lot of support that was also given from the Americans and the Allies to show a model of East and West Germany. Let's be clear on this one. So after the reunification, there was a absolutely drive of export-driven activities. Because Germany, in contrast to the U.S., the German consumer is not as important in the overall economical system like in the U.S., right? It is a export-driven model. Now, fast forward, look at what happens. I think this whole model gets challenged by the current setup with China. So the Germans have to wake up and say, look, the recipe of success that worked for the last 70 years have to be probably changed. What is it? And I think this process, for my taste, takes too long because nobody wants to face reality that you got to change. And I think it's going, it's moving, but it's not moving to the speed that it should be. Because let's be clear, one of the elements that also the German society has developed over the last years is a social system that requires economical growth for redistribution of wealth. If the recipe of that growth is not there anymore, there will be kind of secondary impacts that I'm personally very worried about that could go into the wrong direction. So from that standpoint, I'm a strong believer that there will be a rapid awakening, and the next election in Germany will be the starting point of this one. Now, some of the decisions, unfortunately, Kevin, have already been made and cannot be turned around anymore. That's my worry.
So I would say you're cautiously optimistic.
You know what? I know a lot of German and Germans, and I think there will be an awakening. Yeah, there will be. I don't bet against the Germans. People tried that in soccer and lost. So let's apply the same.
Yeah, that's the perfect transition to learning a little bit more about you. So a few weeks ago, when you were named to this role, you and I spent some time together, and you told me about your favorite football team, Borussia Dortmund. I'm sure I didn't say that right, but
close enough. Close enough. Yeah.
But you told me in the context of the Pittsburgh comparison, the colors of the team. Tell us what the colors are about.
Yeah. So
I thought it was fascinating.
So the Dortmund is actually in the heart of the Ruhr area, which was traditional mining and steel companies, right? And my mom's family is actually from the city of Dortmund, so that's why that's where the love for the team comes from and everything. And the reality is that the shirt of the team is yellow and black, okay? And they have changed the kit over the last couple of years, but they had for a while a kit that kind of a shirt that people look like a bumblebee, right? And the joke in the street is always, why did they select the yellow and the black? And the joke in the street is, okay, the black is actually for the black in the lungs of the people because they were working in the mines, and the yellow is for the teeth because people smoke so much. So that's the story behind it, and that's why they are proud of it. And I can just invite everybody, if you ever have a chance and you want to experience a beautiful football or soccer experience, go to the Stadium Dortmund. That is passion pure. You cannot escape it, and you will. It's this goosebump moment. It's wonderful. It's great.
We are going to do that together, and I have no horse in the German football universe, but I do now, just based on the colors.
Yeah, and there is one section right behind. It's called the Yellow Wall, right? If you go on the Yellow Wall, I promise you, you will not come out of it without having a lot of beer. I promise you. It's the best ever. The Yellow Wall.
You and I are going to go there together. You mentioned earlier that you read 2 newspapers every day, the Wall Street Journal and one from Germany. What book are you reading right now, and what books? What's your top 5? What books do you love? What books changed your view of the world and impacted you?
Yeah, so I like to first of all, I like to read books that are biographies. So I like to read biographies. You can learn quite a bit from people to read biographies. So I like this piece. Look, and I read right now Not a specific book, because I'm trying to read a lot of performance product material in the evening to get on speed. So,
so you've chosen PowerPoints over great biographies?
Well, yes. Honestly, right now I got a dump of R&D stuff to understand where we produce what. So that is my current book. So the author of this is Ralph DiGiulio, our R&D director, which I'm reading right now. So yes.
So what's your book? I'm gonna put you on the spot. You gotta give the audience one book that you, in the course of your life, that you loved and that you recommend.
Yeah, so
it's okay. You can think about it. It's kind of a stump question.
No. It's it's actually from Viktor Frankl. You know that book, Search, Man for Search Meaning, or was it? I'm looking for the American title. I read it in Germany, so I think, or the English title, it's Man for Search for Men, or Man for Search Meaning. I think that's the title officially. Okay. I think that's the translation. So it's a pretty intense book, but it's if you want to calibrate your life, what is really important in life, I strongly recommend people to read it. It boils it down to a lot of basic principles and what is important in life.
We will definitely put that in the show notes, and I'm confident that there's people inside the company that are probably going to pick that book up now after you've recommended it. Yeah. So I know that you love to cook Mediterranean food from your time in Barcelona. Tell us about your family. Tell us about what you do for fun. Tell us about Jan outside of burying himself in R&D PowerPoint slide decks.
So I love to spend the weekend with family and friends. I try to maximize my time with the family when I'm at home and on the weekends. So that's what I do. I try to participate as much as possible in the activities of my kids. They're big runners, cross-country runners. So that's what I'm doing on the weekends. In the past, they did a lot of soccer, but now they are running. So from that standpoint, that's now what I'm doing. And I just enjoy time to travel with the family. So we travel quite a bit, and my wife and I have a clear vision to show the kids the world as much as possible, with the potential downside that they probably end up somewhere in the world and not close to us. But that is okay. My parents were so generous to do the same with me, and we just want to give the same back to the kids. So that's great. And I just love to spend time and also do sports. So I'm a big runner. I like to run. That helps me to kind of think and get rid of a lot of energy I have. So I come calm into the meetings and don't get too impatient.
We had some of our moles and sleuths on the side. The book that Jan is referring to is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Yeah, that's the transition. That's the translation.
By Viktor Frankl. We cooked up the big AI supercomputers, Jan, and we
thank you very much for the translation.
We took the German translation from your brain, and we wanted to make sure that readers knew that Man's Search for Meaning was that Man's Search for Meaning was the book that they should read.
Read it. It's a great book. It's worth reading it.
So when you are with your family and you are Saturday night cooking up that Mediterranean meal, what drink do you pair with the meal?
So normally, just to correct you, so we have a tradition at the house. So we start our journey for the weekend on Friday nights with pizza. So I take, when I'm at home, I take...
Not very German.
No, we do not. So I actually do the pizza dough before I go to the office when I'm here early in the morning, so it can rise all day. So I do the pizza in the night, right? And then we have classical late lunches. So we normally have lunch between 2 and 3, like you do it in Southern Europe. So I love to drink wine. So from that standpoint, a good red wine has to be on the table, or a good Riesling white wine could be also well paired with fish.
So the conversation around drinking got me thinking about a question that I love to ask people, which is, if you could go back to college, drinking college, what would you major in? Would you major in same thing, business, or would you, as you look back over the course of a successful career, would you have kept the same major?
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I love what I'm doing. I love to do deals. I love it. I wouldn't change a thing on this one. Now, what I would change and add to it is maybe study a little bit harder and do a little bit more and learn more around psychology, right? I did just 2 semesters of psychology, but I would probably do more because at the end of the day in business, it is all the human chemistry. Understanding human beings and understanding how they tick is super helpful. And I would probably learn more around this one if I would do it all over again. But I wouldn't change the chapter. I'm at the right field.
So listening, I'm hearing kind of some common threads. One, mentioned Man's Search for Meaning, and now, you probably would have studied more psychology. What gives you hope for the future when you look ahead? What gives you hope, and what worries you too? Not just on a personal level, but a business level, and the world that we all inhabit together as humans. What do you worry about, and what gives you optimism?
So it gives me one piece that gives me optimism is yes, the human can make a lot of mistakes and take a lot of wrong decisions and hurt a lot of people. But if it all comes down, right, people want to take care of each other. I mean, if you as a dad, as a family, as a mom, you want that your kids, if you have kids, have a better future than you had, have a more secure future, a more prosperous future. And if you boil it all the way down, that's what people drive, right? And I think this is the big hope I have. People they want to be together, they want to be social people in certain ways. So and that's why I'm very positive on this one. Yes, I'm concerned about things like global conflicts, the lack of tolerance, the lack of listening to each other. I mean, look, I think we don't communicate enough and don't make an effort to understand and listen really. I see too often that we just wait for the moment to make our point rather than understanding the other people's position and really embrace it to say, maybe he or she has a point, and I should reflect on my own points of view. So,
why do you think that is?
Because we don't take. It's a great conversation that I have fairly regular with my kids, because I think, in my view, we dumb down communication. We dumb it down. Communication exists when you go back and forth. It's not a one-way communication, and I think modern life has boiled it down to the basics of okay, I sent you a text, I ping you. That is not communication. That is information sharing, but that is not understanding the other points of view. And I think we gotta, if we really want to move forward as a society and move forward also in our journey of a better future, we got to communicate better. And look, the best example was when we talk with customers, right? I can send an email, I can ping an email, but I can never get a deal done because it comes back to what you said, Kevin. We talk about trust, we talk about understanding the other person, really getting to something where everybody can go home and say in the evening, I had a good day. I did a deal that I can stand up with and look in the mirror These are things that require communication and understanding and listening skills.
Yeah, you made a really profound point there about information versus communication. And you're right. We all send 200 text messages a day. I probably send 500 a day. And it allows you to communicate with a lot of different people. And that's wonderful. You're right. A lot of that is information and it's not communication. And I think we live in a world with so much information that the value of that information becomes commoditized. And, I recently saw that the former chairman and CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, he attributed some of Google's problems around AI to people not being in the office. And I think that pendulum is swinging back. Although I think Huntsman, and I give our leadership a lot of credit for this, but I don't think they ever went in that direction. We've been in the office 4 days a week for 2024. And I know that our leadership felt strongly that people need to be together so they can communicate, so that it's not just Zoom calls. But yeah, that information versus communication, that's a really, as a communications professional, I like that. I'm probably going to steal that from you and use it. Two more questions. Talk about the Huntsman culture. You have a little bit, but I want you to reflect a little bit more deeply on the Huntsman culture.
Yeah. I think Huntsman has a very unique culture. And let me give you an example. I think when you can differentiate yourself with a Me Too product in the market space, just on the name Huntsman, and you're probably not the biggest one, you're probably not the cheapest one, but the Huntsman name, the Huntsman culture, the Huntsman trust earns you the business and extracts a premium that tells you that it is unique. And look, when I worked in polyurethanes, we did a lot of deals and business just on the belief of the Huntsman culture that we will stand by our customers, we will help them in good times and in bad times, and we go the extra mile. And that Huntsman magic, the Huntsman culture, made a huge difference in that marketplace. Now, what is the uniqueness of the Huntsman culture? In my opinion, is be trustworthy, stick what you say, be ethical, right, and go the extra mile. If you say you do it, that's one. Take care of each other and also drive for success and drive for things that really drive the journey forward for the company. And I think working as a team will allow us to do so. So I think these are elements which are critical, and we have to live them. And I think it allows us as a company, as teams, to be successful. And I have a good comparison because I grew up in a culture for 18 years with BASF, which was completely different. And this is very unique that we have at Huntsman. And again, everybody has to work on that because you can actively shape that culture and work on that culture. It's very precious and very special.
Yeah, and right now there is an engineering student from UNC, Texas A&M, universities all across the country, and they're looking after they graduate to join a company. Why should they join Huntsman?
If I would have the chance to talk with a student, I would actually tell him or her my experience in the company. I would tell him or her the opportunity to really make an impact. As I said before, this is a company that drives individual decision-making, really implementing things, driving things forward. You have significant freedom to do a lot of things. And especially when you're new in your career, exploring that, getting the help and support in a team to drive and shape is wonderful. You should absolutely join that company to get this experience. You will thrive on it, and the good thing is the breadth of your work is significantly different than in a company that is very, very structured in that way. So if you take companies like Dow or BASF or Covestra, they're probably much more rigid in terms of where your responsibility starts and where it ends. Huntsman gives you a much broader aspect of this one, and for young people or students who just want to explore it, it's wonderful. I would never miss that opportunity.
Jan, it's been great to talk to you, and I loved your comments on philosophy, on psychology, on culture, learning about your family, your travel, backpacking, and also your career. And I'm thrilled to see you in this role. I've worked with you since I joined Huntsman. I'm proud of you, and I think you're going to do great things. And congratulations. And finally, to our listeners, thank you for joining us for another episode of Huntsman Knows How, and we'll see you next time.